Hey everyone,
Hey.
welcome to the Catholic Homeschool Neighborhood. Today I am joined by Bonnie Landry. Welcome, Bonnie. How are you?
Hi, Dominic. I'm well.
So, we are on a quest to help you find the best fit for your homeschool life. This Catholic Homeschool Neighborhood introduces you to friendly creators and guides as you build your own homeschool neighborhood. I'm your host, Dominic DeSouza, a second-gen homeschool dad. Bonnie is a 31-year homeschool mom of 7 kids. She is a speaker, podcaster, and an advocate of joy. In fact, Joy, that's the name of your podcast, isn't it? Make Joy
Yeah,
Normal.
joy, normal.
I love that. So we're going to get into that in just a couple of minutes here. First, what's a fun fact about you that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I had trouble coming up with a fun fact, and then I thought, oh, wait a sec. My husband and I ballroom dance, and the reason I chose that particular fun fact is because of the analogies that go along with it, for sure. Yeah.
Well, I got to ask then, what are
What?
those?
So in our life, what we discovered as ballroom dancers, when we started ballroom dancing before we got married, and we took several sets of lessons and whatnot, and we realized that it was actually really good for relationships because you have to listen to each other. I have to follow. I have to let you lead, right? So that in and of itself is a good sort of a marital, habit to cultivate, but also that you have to be both firm in your stance, but you also have to be soft and receptive, right?
Wow.
Because you don't know what's coming next, so you have to be willing to adapt. To you can't have a set in your mind how things are going to go. And so, just in terms of the spiritual life, that seems like such a great analogy. You have to be really firm in your convictions, but you have to be soft and receptive to what it is God puts in front of you, right? You have to learn to listen to the music, right? You have to learn to respond instead of react to things. And that dancing is really all about relationships. Our entire life is really all about relationships. And I think another little analogy that could be made is, if you lose your step, and we do as parents get derailed all the time, that you just have to go back to the basics, right? And so my husband counts me in. So it's just a great analogy for life. So
That
I think
is.
that's fun fact.
I ballroom danced in college as well. I love the dancing
Fun.
classes, so I get that. And
Yeah.
yeah, there's a whole fun side from like the guy's point of view, where you're also just as receptive and
Yeah.
aware of the other. That's great. Okay, so as you sort of mentioned family life and homeschooling, then what prompted you to get into homeschooling?
Well, I'm a convert, so this is pre-Catholic days.
Okay.
I was actually a single parent for a period of time with my oldest daughter, my oldest daughter is 34. My
Mhm.
youngest is 15. Uh, and when she was a baby and I was on my own with her, I happened to meet somebody who I'd never heard of the word homeschooling, right? So this woman said to me, I think I want to teach my own children because I want to travel with them. Right. And I thought,
Wow.
oh, wow, that is a cool idea, teaching your own kids. And then I just sort of had that on the back burner, but I thought, okay, this is amazing to be able to teach your own kids. I wonder if you can actually do that. But then, she was a baby. I didn't think about it for a couple more years. And, my life was in a state of crisis for a number of years as a single mom. And then when she was 2.5, I met my husband. And my husband, he was very sort of standard school system, didn't really understand why I had this sort of idea about, we could do something super cool for education. But anyway, I'd never heard of homeschooling, didn't know if it was legal, didn't know, what the story was behind that. So I started interviewing some of the principals of our local school. So I interviewed the Montessori teacher and principal. I interviewed our local French immersion, my husband's French Canadian, French immersion school, and just our local public school. And they were all very nice, and the principals were lovely, and they showed me the classrooms. And this was interesting, and everybody was lovely. But the overriding factor that I came away with every interview was, but they don't love her. And I do love her. And
Wow.
so isn't education best pursued in an environment of love? And so that was where I started with it all.
Mhm.
So then, she turns 5, and I suddenly discover that there are actually other homeschoolers in my town. Not very many. There was maybe half a dozen. It was very new in Canada. This is 1991, and the States is about 15 years ahead of us in in the homeschool movement. So we were just starting to see homeschool graduates in the States. And, so that was very exciting for us to kind of watch from afar how it was unfolding, right?
Yeah.
But that was the beginning of a career for me, for sure.
That's amazing. Gosh,
Yeah.
how quickly, well, homeschooling has come in just the 30 years you mentioned. I mean, this is why what Paula Siskanik is doing with the Catholic Homeschool Network and, shows
It's
stuff like
incredible.
this is
Yeah,
it's just moved so quickly. It's time to, she says, reimagine Catholic homeschooling. So
absolutely.
it's a passion project. Is your podcast now? It says make joy normal, cozy
Right.
homeschooling. And I'll read your little blurb here. You say, you get to ask the questions in a context of promoting joy, fun, and an environment of love. Your hosts, Bonnie and Elizabeth, welcome you. Join us for some honest discussion about how to make home education cozy, just like you imagined. What prompted that? I mean, it sounds amazing. Tell us how it's been
Okay.
going and what it is.
It's a great question. So basically, I've been a homeschool speaker for probably not very far into my homeschool journey, maybe 7 or 8 years in.
Okay.
What happened was we were really, really enjoying ourselves, and my kids were cooperative, and we're having a really lovely homeschool experience. What I realized as the homeschool movement was growing in my town was that many other of my peers were not having the same experience. And so when I would just share at homeschool meetings, we would just gather in people's homes and whatnot, I would share something we were doing or whatever. And people were saying, well, how does that work? Like, how is it that you're not all stressed out? How is it that you're not ticking boxes? How is it that you're not kind of being weighed down by this, that this is a really enjoyable experience for you? And to be honest, I didn't know exactly why. Like at first I thought, well, maybe it's because I don't really use very much curriculum, or maybe it's because we're really literature based, or maybe it's because, I don't know. I'm not really sure why it's enjoyable. So I had to examine it, right? I had to examine it. And in the examining, I had some women ask if they would give like a workshop, right? And I said, sure. So I examined this, and really what it all came down to, those things played in for sure, being very strongly literature based, not using a lot of curriculum, sort of really looking at what education is and finding out what really matters in education, and getting to the heart of that and cutting all the sort of crap of education, that, cutting the fat and sort of meat and potatoes education. But also that what really mattered to me was non-coercive education. That was something that really, really mattered, that I don't ever want this to be coercive. I don't want it to be about gold stars or about what you get to do after your schoolwork is done. That's not part of the game for me. And so that played in, and that the relationship had to come first. So those were the really fundamental things. So I gave this workshop to this group of ladies. And then 6 months later, I had another group of ladies from a neighboring town say, oh, we were hoping you'd do that workshop for us. This started to grow to the point where, over say 15 years, I was doing the workshop, maybe 3 or 4 times a year as my family could tolerate. Still had quite a few kids at home, obviously, at this point. And then I ended up deciding to have it professionally videoed because I just couldn't keep up with the demand for the workshop, right? And I thought, let's make it available to those who want it.
Wow.
So I did that about 6 years ago. And then the video that really took off, the video, became its own little entity, and I, charged money for it. At the beginning of COVID, the video had long before paid for itself. And I was starting to think about taking little sections of it and putting it up on YouTube or whatever for free. Then COVID hit, and I thought, you know what, now's the moment, right? We have to make this free. And so the workshop is like a full day workshop that really covers the whole gamut of, what does homeschooling look like in this framework? So that just took off, and I had no idea what was going to happen from that. And I ended up having a couple of really significant interviews from that workshop, and really being encouraged to podcast. And I thought, well, I can't. I'm not technically, sort of capable of doing that, right? So I had Cameron Fradd actually was one of the people who interviewed me, and that really helped the podcast to take off in this workshop. And she said, I'm going to find you somebody to help you. You need a millennial. And She found me Elizabeth. I actually have 2 co-hosts now, Elizabeth Evans and Christina Jalloway, and they take turns hosting with me and bringing the questions to the platform. But
Nice.
anyway, so that's how it started, and it's been fabulous. I love podcasting. It's really a platform I should have dialed into way earlier.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So where's it going? What are you working towards next?
I get so many beautiful questions from people. Sometimes I can answer them myself. Sometimes I want to pull somebody else in and interview them, and sort of share that person's wisdom. And however I bring that out as somebody, from this side of homeschooling where I'm almost finished, looking back and how might this have helped me in my journey early on? How it might help younger homeschoolers. Where am I going with it? I don't really know. I sort of take it week to week. And I'm just loving the input from young homeschoolers in particular, that they just really want to know. And the questions I get from them are so beautiful and so tender. They want to be so tender with their families, and are really seeking how to do that. It's just an amazing thing to see.
Awesome. How many episodes are you at now?
So 80 something.
80. Wow. So you go live weekly?
I think so. Yeah. I think we're around 80 anyway. So it's been almost 2 years. No, a year and a half for sure. So we do weekly. Yeah.
How can people find you, Bonnie?
So the website address is just makejoynormal.buzzsprout.com. So that's easy to find, but it can also find me from my website, which is bonnielandry.ca, link to my podcast from there, link to contact information from there as well, and my Instagram and all the other places I hang out.
Nice. And then the workshop that you mentioned that was pre-recorded, is that available through your website, or how can people get that?
You can link to it from my website. It's also just on my YouTube channel, which is just Bonnie Landry. And so I put it up on YouTube, but I also put the audio of it just recently up on my podcast, because I was just getting more and more podcast listeners, and I thought, I think it would be good. It's done in 4 parts, so I just put the 4 parts up as audio as well.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a fantastic place to wrap. If you had 1 minute, Bonnie, to share a message from your heart to homeschoolers everywhere, what would you share with them?
Yeah. I think that it's really important for parents to understand that cozy, beautiful, love of education environment that they sort of pictured when they were thinking about homeschooling, that thing that is in their imagination is actually an attainable goal. And it doesn't mean that every minute or even every day of your life is going to look like that, but it can be the overarching vibe or theme of your family life and your homeschool day. And that really important to not think that, okay, I guess it just can't be like I imagined, because it can be, right? And that's where I really hope to help people through what I do.
I think that's wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us today, Bonnie.
You're so welcome.
And then for those who are watching this, if you did enjoy this episode, please share it with your one friend that you think would like to see it. And then come and join us in the free homeschool community on CatholicHomeschoolCommunity.com. God bless everyone, and we will see you in the neighborhood.
Thanks, Dominic.